Good morning, everybody. My name is Lizzy Woolf. I am the team rector here at St George's. And as Hannah has already said, today is Palm Sunday, the start of Holy Week, which leads up to the momentous, world-changing events of Good Friday and Easter Sunday. On Palm Sunday, we remember Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem as king. So I've been thinking about grand entrances. Archbishop Sarah's entrance into Canterbury Cathedral for her installation this week was quite impressive. But my favourite grand entrance was part of the 2012 Olympic opening ceremony. Can anyone remember that? The late Queen Elizabeth made a wonderfully dramatic entrance with James Bond, apparently then parachuting into the Olympic Stadium. More personally, the grandest entrance that I have ever been part of was the Lord Mayor's show in 2013. That was the year that my stepmother was the Lord Mayor of London and I was her chaplain. So you can just see me in the corner there. The history is that the newly elected Lord Mayor has to travel to Westminster from the City of London to swear allegiance to the King or Queen. So about 800 years ago, the Lord Mayor started doing that with a huge procession designed to show off his wealth, power and status. So today, the Lord Mayor's show is quite a spectacle. It was really quite an experience. The parade is about 3 miles long. Thousands of people come to watch, lining the route and cheering the new Lord Mayor, who is riding in a golden carriage. And inside the golden carriage, you have the Lord Mayor, you have her sword bearer with a sword, her mace bearer, and her chaplain. And the Lord Mayor hangs out and waves her tricorn hat to all her supporters. Now, on Palm Sunday, around 2,000 years ago, Jesus rode into Jerusalem as its true king. And in Matthew's account, there are actually quite a few similarities to the Lord Mayor's parade. There's a procession, there are crowds, there's cheering and waving. But Jesus does things a bit differently. Now, they didn't actually have golden carriages like that in those days, I don't think. But the expectation would have been for him to ride on a big white war horse. But Jesus rides a donkey. Now, there wasn't a transport mix-up. This is not the equivalent of a replacement bus service. This is actually a deliberate choice. Our passage tells us that he sends 2 of his disciples to bring him a donkey and her colt with the instruction, if anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them. A donkey was an ordinary working animal used to carry heavy loads, a little bit like we might use a wheelbarrow today. So imagine that you want to make a grand entrance. You get dressed up smartly, and then you ask someone to push you in a wheelbarrow. It would be a bit strange. So why does Jesus choose a donkey? Well, I sometimes think of it a bit like a game of charades, when your team has to guess what you are acting out. By choosing to make his grand entrance on a donkey, Jesus is telling us at least 2 important things without having to use any words. The first one is about what he's here to do, his role. And the second is about how he's going to do it, his character. So the first thing that the donkey tells us is that Jesus is Messiah and King. As you know, when God created the world, it was good. We still see that today in many ways, from the glory of a sunset to the joy of a precious friendship. But alongside the beauty, sin has crept in and spoilt our world. On a big scale, there are wars, natural disasters, and disease. We're really aware of the terrible suffering in Iran and many other parts of the world at the moment. We know this is not the way things should be. On a smaller scale in our own lives, we all make mistakes, saying and doing things that we shouldn't, and not saying or doing things that we should. But God has promised a rescuer. All through the Old Testament, we hear whispers of him. A Messiah is coming. He is coming to save us. He is coming to put the world to rights. One of the messianic prophecies that would have been well known by Jews at the time of Jesus is from the prophet Zechariah. Zechariah lived about 500 years before Jesus, and in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, he says, "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." So by choosing to enter Jerusalem on a donkey, Jesus is acting out this ancient prophecy. He's sending a message to those with eyes to see. It's me. I'm the Messiah. I'm God's rescuer. And I've come to rescue you. The crowd then picks up the royal theme, spreading their cloaks and branches on the road as befitted a king. And they shout, "Hosanna," an exclamation of praise which literally means save or God save. And also the crowd start to sing Psalm 118. "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." This is part of a great psalm of praise that pilgrims used to sing on the way to Jerusalem. It's a song of victory, a hymn of praise to the God who defeats all his foes and establishes his kingdom. So all of this together, the donkey, the cloaks and the branches on the road, the shouts of Hosanna and Psalm 118, creates a very grand, very royal entrance. It's not surprising the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" For faithful first century Jews, there is no mistaking the significance. Jesus comes as the fulfillment of his people's hopes. He is God's rescuer. He's the Messiah, the King, finally here. So that's the first thing that the donkey tells us. Jesus is Messiah and King. That's his role. The second thing that the donkey points to is how Jesus is going to go about these things, his servant heart. Kings are important, powerful people. They usually have servants to look after them and armies to fight for them. Jesus is the King of Kings. All power and authority belong to him. But Jesus is not like other kings. He was born in a stable. He rides on a lowly, borrowed donkey for his grand entrance. Later, he will wash his disciples' feet. Jesus is humble and gentle. He gives away power. He's servant-hearted. And that means, of course, that his rescue mission won't look like anyone expected. The Jews expected their Messiah to be a military leader who would free them from their hated Roman occupiers. But Jesus hasn't come to fight the Romans. He has come for a far greater purpose, to save the world from all the powers of sin, evil, and darkness. He's come to make a way for us to be reconciled with God. And he does it as the servant king, paying the price himself. Now, for many people, this is actually too much of a challenge to their expectations. Despite the celebration and the joy of Jesus' grand royal entrance, things change very quickly. On Palm Sunday, the crowds shout, "Hosanna," but just a few days later, they shout, "Crucify him." And on Good Friday, Jesus is led out to die on a cross. So the donkey tells us these two important things. Jesus is King and Messiah, and Jesus has a servant heart. But why is that important? What difference does that make to us here in Leeds in 2026? Well, I think that there is both an invitation and a challenge for us. The invitation is to draw near to Jesus. With Jesus, it is never just about information. It's always about relationship. When we dig into the Palm Sunday story, we're not just learning interesting facts about a historical figure. We're learning about someone who wants to be in relationship with us, who invites us to draw near. And the Jesus that we see on Palm Sunday is worth drawing close to. Jesus is the Messiah. He's come specifically to rescue us, and he does it in the most extraordinary servant-hearted way. Whoever you are, whatever your situation, your story, Jesus sees you. He sees your joy and your passion. He sees your struggles and pain. He sees when you've been mistreated or oppressed. And he cares. He cares about you enough to die on a cross to rescue you. Palm Sunday also reminds us to keep trusting in Jesus even when he's not doing what we expect or want. We've been thinking about this quite a lot, actually, over the past few weeks in our Hope in the Wilderness series. And it has been great to hear testimonies from our congregation about how they've been able to hold on to Jesus in the midst of hard times and the difference that that has made. I found it really encouraging and moving. Today, we're just going to watch a short testimony on video. This is taken from Streams Studios. You can find it online, and it's got lots of very short videos with people sharing their different experiences of faith. So today, we're going to watch one from Krish Kandaya.
I think the time I felt most disappointed with God was when my mother was dying. The cancer was kind of riddled through her body, and she couldn't speak anymore. And I remember her reaching out to my hand, and I was the one giving comfort and support to her. And you cry out to God. You ask for him either to heal her or to, mercifully take her life away so she could be out of the pain. And I was just so frustrated. Like, why wouldn't God intervene one way or another? Why are we in this limbo? What are you supposed to do with that? It was just hours and hours of her just gasping for breath. It was awful. And I remember reading the prophetic book of Habakkuk at that time. And what I love about the book of Habakkuk is it's an argument. It's Habakkuk having a go at God, saying, how dare you? Why are you not behaving in the way that I want you to? Why are you not measuring up to my standards? And God just really kind of speaking back at Habakkuk and asking him to just trust that he has a bigger picture. And it resolves at the end with Habakkuk kind of expressing his confidence in God, even though he's living with disappointment. And this is the passage. I go back to it a lot because it's so beautiful. Habakkuk says this: though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Saviour. The sovereign Lord is my strength. It's not Habakkuk saying everything's okay, that everything's gone the way I want. He said, no, there are real issues here. We have a major problem with no harvest. There's no food. We're in trouble. And yet I'm still going to somehow hold on to my trust that there is a God in charge and I can keep going. And I found myself needing to do that when my mother passed away. And I look back, and actually those moments of having to wrestle with God, speak out all the grief and anger and disappointment at him, actually brought me closer to him.
Now, there can be all sorts of reasons why we might hold back from Jesus. We might be fearful. We might be used to managing on our own. We might be deeply hurt or grieving. These are all understandable. But today, Jesus invites us all to draw near, whether that's for the first time or the 1,000th time. And in a few minutes, we will make some space for you to respond, if you'd like to, with some quiet prayer. But the second thing that I want to draw out from our Palm Sunday story is a challenge. And this challenge is about our use of power. We've seen how the Palm Sunday donkey points to Jesus' servant heart and the way that he often gives away power. Philippians 2 famously puts it like this: Jesus, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a human being, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Now, power is a complex, multifaceted thing. Sometimes we have power because of our position, perhaps at work or in society. Sometimes it's to do with wealth or access to resources. Other times it's more about personality or relationships. Sometimes we feel very powerless, perhaps because we are alone in an unfamiliar or hostile place. Power can be a good thing. It helps us to get stuff done, and we can use it to bless people in both small ways and bigger ways, and to challenge injustice. But power can, of course, also be abused, sometimes with terrible results. So we need appropriate accountability with good checks and balances. At St. George's, we have a team of clergy and staff who work closely together, supporting and challenging each other. And importantly, we also work with our church wardens and our PCC, who are elected representatives of our congregation, to oversee all the ministry and the mission of the church. We are very fortunate to have an excellent, prayerful PCC who discuss decisions thoroughly, ensuring that a range of opinions and voices can be heard. We'll be electing some new PCC members at our annual church meeting on the 28th of April, so it would be wonderful if you're able to join us for that. This Palm Sunday, as we reflect on Jesus' servant heart and his use of power, there's a challenge for us to think about our own use of power. First of all, we need to identify it. What kind of power do we have in different situations? We all have some power, even if it is just to choose how we respond to a situation that feels out of our control, to choose how to speak to those who are around us, or even to choose to pray. How can we use our power to bless other people? And when might Jesus call us to give up power for the good of others?